A new year always has a quiet way of announcing itself. The decorations come down, routines settle, and suddenly you start noticing just how much you've accumulated over a lifetime. For many of us over 60, it's not that we don't have enough, it's that we have more than we truly need. Over the years, I've learned that being intentional about what I don't buy has been one of the simplest ways to save money, reduce clutter, and create a home that feels calmer and easier to live in. This video is part of a yearly tradition I've come to value, a moment to pause, reflect, and reset before the year really gets going. The purpose isn't perfection, and it's not about cutting everything out. It's about resetting spending habits, clearing out unnecessary clutter, and shaping a home that supports where life is right now. I'll be walking through 10 things I'm not buying in 2026 and briefly reflecting on how last year's rules held up in real life. With that context in mind, let's start right at the beginning, the first rule that set the tone for everything else. 1. The rule of 5 for buying new clothes. The first thing I'm not buying in 2026 isn't a specific item at all, it's excess. I'm continuing the rule of 5 for buying new clothes, a simple but powerful boundary that completely changed the way I think about shopping. The rule is straightforward. Over the course of the entire year, I limit myself to a very small, clearly defined number of new clothing purchases. That limit creates a pause. It forces intention. Instead of buying something just because it looks nice in the moment, I stop and ask whether it truly fits my life now, my body now, and my daily routines. What stood out to me when I first adopted this rule was how much mental relief it brought. Many people over 60 have closets full of clothes collected across decades, yet still feel overwhelmed or dissatisfied when getting dressed. The rule of 5 shifts the focus away from having more options and toward having the right options. It naturally encourages choosing clothing that is comfortable, familiar, and practical, the pieces you actually reach for without hesitation. At this stage of life, comfort isn't about giving up style, it's about respecting your body and your energy. This rule also quietly eliminates impulse buying. When you know you only have a limited number of clothing purchases for the entire year, you become far more selective. Trendy pieces, uncomfortable fabrics, and maybe someday items stop feeling worth it. Each purchase has to earn its place. That leads to fewer regrets, less clutter, and a wardrobe that feels calm instead of crowded. I'm carrying this rule forward into 2026 because it worked. It didn't feel restrictive, it felt freeing. Fewer clothes to manage, fewer decisions to make, and a closet that reflects who I am today, not who I used to be or who the fashion industry tells me I should be. 2. Clothes made out of synthetic materials. The second thing I'm not buying in 2026 is clothing made out of synthetic materials like polyester, nylon, and acrylic. This is a new rule for me, and it came from paying closer attention to how clothes actually feel and perform over time, not how they look on a rack or a screen. After years of wearing different fabrics, I've noticed that many synthetic pieces may look fine at first, but they often become uncomfortable, hold odors, or feel harsh against the skin the longer you wear them. As we get older, skin can become more sensitive, and comfort starts to matter in a very real, everyday way. Clothing isn't just something you put on to leave the house, it's something you live in for hours at a time. I found that synthetic fabrics often trap heat, feel clammy, or lose their shape quickly, which makes them less enjoyable to wear and more likely to end up sitting unused in the closet. That cycle of buying, wearing briefly, and then ignoring an item is exactly what I'm trying to move away from. In contrast, natural and breathable fabrics tend to age better alongside us. They're often more comfortable, easier to layer, and feel more forgiving on the body throughout the day. This rule isn't about being perfect or eliminating every synthetic blend overnight. It's about being more intentional and asking a simple question before buying: will this feel good on my body, not just today, but a year from now? If the answer isn't a clear yes, it's an easy no. By setting this boundary in 2026, I'm choosing durability and comfort over convenience and trends. It means fewer clothes overall, but better ones, pieces I actually enjoy wearing, that last longer, and that don't need constant replacing. For me, that's a meaningful step toward a wardrobe that supports daily life instead of complicating it. 3. Beauty or anti-aging products. The third thing I'm not buying in 2026 is beauty or anti-aging products beyond simple replacements. This is a rule I'm continuing from last year because it brought a surprising amount of clarity and calm to my daily routines. Instead of treating skincare, makeup, hair products, and nail items as separate categories that constantly need updating, I now see them as one complete system. When something runs out, I replace it thoughtfully. If it doesn't, I don't add anything new. What I've learned is how easy it is for these products to quietly multiply. A new serum here, a different cream there, a makeup shade that promises something better. Before long, drawers and cabinets are full of half-used items that never quite delivered on their promises. Much of that pressure comes from fear-based marketing that suggests aging is a problem to be fixed rather than a natural process to be supported. Stepping away from that messaging has been incredibly freeing. This replacement-only approach has also helped me pay more attention to what actually works for me. When you're not constantly chasing the next product, you start noticing which ones you genuinely use and enjoy. That leads to simpler routines, less waste, and fewer decisions at the beginning and end of each day. For many of us over 60, simplicity is not about doing less for ourselves, it's about doing what truly matters without unnecessary noise. Continuing this rule into 2026 isn't about giving things up. It's about trust. Trusting that I don't need a cabinet full of products to feel put together or confident. Trusting that consistency beats novelty. And trusting that caring for myself can be straightforward, calm, and grounded, without the constant pressure to buy something new just to keep up. 4. New pots or pans. The fourth thing I'm not buying in 2026 is new pots or pans, unless something genuinely breaks or becomes unsafe to use. This is a rule I'm continuing from last year because it helped me separate what I actually need in the kitchen from what simply looks appealing or promises a minor upgrade. Cookware is one of those categories where it's easy to believe a new purchase will make cooking easier or more enjoyable, when in reality it often just adds to storage issues and decision fatigue. Over time, I've realized that most kitchens already have more than enough tools to prepare everyday meals. What matters far more than having the latest pan is whether the cookware you already own feels safe and manageable to use. As we get older, weight, balance, and grip become important considerations. A pan that's too heavy, awkward to lift, or difficult to control can quickly turn cooking into a chore or even a safety concern. That's why this rule focuses on replacing only when something is worn out, damaged, or no longer safe. Another benefit of this approach is avoiding the cycle of constant upgrading. Non-stick coatings, specialty pans, and trendy materials often come with the promise of convenience, but they can wear out quickly and lead to repeated replacements. By stepping away from that pattern, I've found more satisfaction in using fewer, well-chosen pieces that I'm already comfortable with. Cooking feels calmer when you know exactly where everything is and how it behaves. Continuing this rule into 2026 is about practicality and confidence. It's choosing stability over novelty and function over marketing. By not bringing unnecessary cookware into the home, I'm keeping the kitchen simpler, safer, and easier to navigate, which ultimately makes everyday cooking more enjoyable and far less stressful. 5. Coffee mugs and water bottles. The fifth thing I'm not buying in 2026 is coffee mugs and water bottles. This is a new rule for me, and it came from noticing just how quietly these items multiply over time. They're often given as gifts, picked up as souvenirs, or bought on impulse because they seem small and harmless. Before you know it, cabinets are crowded with mismatched mugs and drawers are filled with bottles that rarely get used. What makes this category tricky is that each individual purchase feels reasonable. One more mug doesn't seem like a problem, and an extra water bottle can feel like a practical backup. But taken together, they create unnecessary clutter and make everyday routines feel more complicated. Reaching into a cabinet and sorting through too many options can be surprisingly draining, especially when most of them serve the same purpose. This rule is simple. I'm only buying a mug or water bottle if one truly needs to be replaced. That means something has broken, worn out, or is no longer safe or comfortable to use. It also means being honest about how many are actually needed. A small, practical number that fits daily life is far more useful than a large collection that just takes up space. Setting this boundary has helped me appreciate the items I already have. When you're not constantly adding more, you naturally start caring for what's there. For many of us over 60, Simplifying small, everyday categories like this can make a noticeable difference. Less clutter in the cabinets means smoother mornings, easier cleanups, and a home that feels calmer and more intentional without sacrificing comfort or hospitality. Over time, these small decisions add up, creating a living space that feels supportive rather than overwhelming and easier to maintain as life slows down. 6. Purses, bags, and totes. The sixth thing I'm not buying in 2026 is purses, bags, and totes. This is a new rule for me, and it came from realizing how often bags are purchased for emotional reasons rather than practical ones. A new bag can feel like a small reward, a style refresh, or a solution to a problem that doesn't actually exist. But over time, those purchases add up, and many of them end up sitting unused in closets or drawers. What I've noticed is that most of us already have bags that work perfectly well for our daily routines. We have the one we reach for out of habit, the one that fits comfortably, and the one that holds exactly what we need without being heavy or awkward. Everything else tends to be occasional, aspirational, or purely impulse-driven. Keeping bags that aren't regularly used only creates clutter and makes it harder to find and enjoy the ones that truly serve a purpose. Resisting impulse buying in this category has been especially helpful because bags are heavily marketed as must-have accessories. Trends change quickly, and it's easy to feel tempted by something that looks stylish or different, even if it doesn't improve daily life in any real way. This rule encourages pausing and asking a simple question before buying: will this actually replace something I already use, or will it just join the pile? By choosing not to buy additional purses, bags, or totes in 2026, I'm simplifying both my storage and my decisions. Keeping only what is functional and already in use makes getting out the door easier and keeps my home more organized. At this stage of life, practicality matters more than variety, and having fewer, reliable options feels far more satisfying than owning many bags that never quite fit into daily routines. Over time, this also reduces the mental load of managing extras and makes everyday life feel lighter and more manageable. 7. Food delivery services. The seventh thing I'm not spending money on in 2026 is food delivery services. This is a new rule for me, and it came from taking a hard look at where money was quietly disappearing without adding much lasting value. Food delivery isn't an item you bring into your home, it's a service, and that's exactly why it can be so easy to overlook. There's nothing tangible to show for it afterward, yet the cost is often much higher than we realize in the moment. What makes food delivery services especially tricky is how normalized they've become. On days when energy is low or motivation is lacking, tapping a button can feel like a small act of self-care. But when you step back and look closely, those small choices often come with delivery fees, service charges, tips, and higher menu prices that quickly add up. For many people over 60, particularly those living on a fixed income or managing a carefully planned budget, these recurring convenience costs can quietly chip away at financial security. This rule isn't about never enjoying a meal out or denying yourself help when it's genuinely needed. In 2026, food delivery is reserved strictly for emergencies, situations where cooking or leaving the house simply isn't possible. Outside of those moments, the focus is on more intentional alternatives that don't come with unnecessary markups. That might mean keeping simple meals on hand, cooking extra portions to freeze, or choosing pickup instead of delivery when ordering food. Being more mindful about food delivery has also encouraged a healthier relationship with meals and routines. Planning ahead reduces last-minute stress, and knowing what's available at home makes decisions easier. Over time, this shift brings a greater sense of control and predictability, which can be deeply comforting at this stage of life. Instead of reacting to hunger or fatigue with costly convenience, meals become calmer, more intentional, and better aligned with both financial goals and everyday well-being. 8. Credit card or late fees. The eighth thing I'm not paying in 2026 is credit card interest or late fees. This is a financial rule I'm continuing from last year because it had one of the most immediate and lasting impacts on my sense of stability. Fees may seem small or unavoidable, but over time they add up to real money that provides absolutely no benefit in return. Paying extra simply for being late or carrying a balance is something I no longer accept as normal. For many people over 60, predictability matters more than ever. Whether you're living on retirement income, managing social security, or carefully planning expenses, surprise charges can throw off an entire month. What helped me most was shifting from reacting to bills to setting up systems that prevent problems before they start. Automating payments for utilities, credit cards, and recurring expenses removed the stress of remembering due dates and eliminated the risk of accidental late fees. This rule also reinforces a deeper boundary around debt. Refusing to pay interest means not charging more than can realistically be paid off. It encourages intentional spending and helps avoid the slow creep of balances that linger month after month. Instead of feeling weighed down by financial loose ends, everything stays clear and accounted for. Continuing this rule into 2026 isn't about being strict or rigid. It's about protecting peace of mind. When bills are paid on time and balances are kept under control, there's less anxiety, fewer unpleasant surprises, and more confidence in day-to-day decisions. That sense of order frees up mental energy for things that matter more, like health, relationships, and enjoying daily life without financial worry. It also creates a steady foundation that makes long-term planning feel calmer and far more manageable. 9. Impulse purchases. The ninth thing I'm not buying in 2026 is impulse purchases. This is a spending rule I'm continuing from last year because it turned out to be one of the most eye-opening changes I've ever made. Impulse buying isn't always about spending large amounts of money. More often, it's the small, unplanned purchases that happen in moments of boredom, stress, or convenience. Individually they seem harmless, but together they quietly drain both money and mental energy. What helped most was learning to pause instead of reacting. Instead of immediately buying something that caught my attention, I started using a waiting period. Sometimes that pause was a day, sometimes a week, and sometimes longer. What surprised me was how often the desire simply disappeared. Many of the things that felt urgent in the moment turned out not to matter at all once I stepped back and gave myself time to think. For people over 60, this kind of intentional pause can be especially powerful. At this stage of life, purchases should support comfort, ease, and stability, not create more clutter or regret. Impulse buying often brings a brief emotional lift followed by disappointment or guilt, especially when the item ends up unused. By slowing down the decision-making process, spending becomes calmer and more aligned with real needs. Continuing this rule into 2026 isn't about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes more carefully. Waiting before buying has reduced regret, simplified my home, and made me far more confident in the purchases I do choose to make. Instead of reacting to every temptation, I'm deciding with intention. That shift alone has saved money, reduced stress, and brought a greater sense of satisfaction with what I already own. 10. The I should mindset. The 10th thing I'm not buying in 2026 isn't something you can hold in your hands, it's the I should mindset. This is a new rule for me, and it may be the most important one on the list. The I should mindset shows up quietly and sounds reasonable on the surface. I should replace this. I should update that. I should have what everyone else seems to have. Over time, those thoughts can drive spending decisions that have very little to do with actual needs or comfort. For many of us over 60, this pressure has been building for decades. We've been told what a home should look like, how a wardrobe should be updated, how often things should be replaced, and even how we should be aging. Letting go of that internal pressure is incredibly freeing. When you remove the word should from your decision-making, you start asking better questions. Do I actually need this? Will this make my daily life easier? Does this fit how I live now? Applying this mindset to spending has changed how I relate to my home and my finances. Instead of upgrading out of obligation or comparison, decisions are based on personal comfort and real usefulness. The same applies to lifestyle choices. What feels manageable, enjoyable, and sustainable matters far more than keeping up appearances or meeting unspoken expectations. Choosing to drop the I should mindset in 2026 isn't about doing less or settling. It's about doing what makes sense now, without guilt or pressure. This shift reduces unnecessary spending, lowers stress, and creates space to appreciate what already works. For me, it's a reminder that this stage of life deserves intention, calm, and self-trust, not constant correction or comparison, especially when peace matters more than approval. Looking back on last year's No Buy rules, what stands out most isn't perfection, it's progress. Some rules held up better than I expected and became part of daily life without much effort. Others needed flexibility, and there were a few moments where exceptions were necessary. Those moments weren't failures, they were information. They showed what truly mattered, what was unrealistic, and where adjustments made more sense than rigid discipline. Over time, the rules became less about restriction and more about awareness, helping me see patterns in spending and habits I hadn't noticed before. What I'm most proud of is the clarity that came from this process. Saying no to certain purchases created room to say yes more confidently to others. It reduced second-guessing, cut down on regret, and made decisions feel calmer instead of reactive. The goal was never to follow rules perfectly, but to learn from them, and that learning carried far more value than strict adherence ever could. Each adjustment made the system more personal, more realistic, and more supportive of how life actually unfolds. The biggest takeaway from all of this is that minimalism after 60 looks very different than it does earlier in life. It's no longer about owning as little as possible, it's about making life easier to manage. Buying less creates space not just in closets and cabinets, but in the mind. Fewer decisions, fewer distractions, and fewer regrets lead to more comfort, stability, and peace of mind. Clear, thoughtful rules act as quiet support systems, guiding choices without constant effort. At this stage of life, intention matters more than impulse, and simplicity becomes a form of care, one that supports the life you are living now, not the one you're told you should be living.